Thanks for tuning in to the HR Chat podcast. Hey, this is Bill Banham, one of the hosts of the show. Just before we get into today's episode, here's a quick message from one of our supporting partners.
We get people. We know what they want from work, why they join, why they leave, why they stay. We get tech, and we understand that it's never the whole solution. At Talent Solutions RPO, we work across every industry and talent market in the world. In the end, it's people who make the difference. Let Talent Solutions RPO help you get the people your organization needs. Visit mpgtalentsolutions.com/HRchat to learn more.
Welcome to the HR Chat podcast, bringing the best of the HR and talent communities to you.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat Show. I'm your host today, Bill Banham. And on this HR Chat, we're going to talk about how the role of HR is changing and the reasons to upskill your HR teams. My guest this time is Erik van Vulpen, founder of the Academy to Innovate HR. Erik, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Bill. Very glad to be here.
Erik, why don't we start by you telling our listeners a bit more about yourself, your career background, and the genesis of Academy to Innovate HR.
Yeah, sure. So I started AIHR, the Academy to Innovate HR, about 5 years ago. Prior to that, I worked a bit and I studied a whole lot. I've always been very passionate about learning and about HR. In my studies, I did a bachelor's in law and a bachelor's in psychology, and I've always been really fascinated about what drives people. So, the fact that, person A in a situation can act and react totally different compared to person B in the same situation, I've always found that really, really fascinating. So during my studies in psychology, I try to figure that out, what predicts human behavior and what predicts human behavior in the context of work, which I found a most fascinating. And I think an interesting story to share about that is when I was doing both bachelors. There was a case that I got as a psychology student where the professor gave us a case study, and he said, there's this pilot. Tomorrow he has to fly from Europe to Asia. It's a long haul flight, but the night before his dog passed away. And there was a few issues, and then in the end he went on the flight, dead tired, and he crashed the airplane. And then the psychology professor said, whose fault was it? Who is responsible for this accident? And then all my peers in psychology started talking, he didn't sleep that well, and that will affect his performance. He wasn't sure about the control buttons in the airplane that, would have affected and increased the likelihood of an accident. And his communication with the co-pilot wasn't that good. And I was sitting there and thinking, psychology students, and a lot of HR professionals, of course, are similar to psychology students. They look at problem in this way. But if I would sit here with my law students, they would answer the question, who's responsible, with a very straight answer: the airline company, of course. So I was sitting there and realizing that in psychology we look at the world from one perspective, but there's a lot more perspectives when it comes to looking at an organization. So after finishing my bachelor's in psychology, I did a master's in organizational psychology, and then a second master's in business administration, where I really tried to figure out, if we look at a business from a business perspective, does then the stuff that we do in HR make, equal sense, or are there some things we should keep in mind? And that combination really inspired me to advance with AIHR. The combination between, on the one hand, the processes, the differences between people, and on the other hand, trying to achieve business outcomes, and how can you link those two and create a high performance HR organization that in the end drives the business. That's where I was coming from, and before I founded AIHR.
This podcast episode is sponsored by Virgin Pulse, the #1 global employee well-being solution provider, supporting 7.5 million members in 20 languages across 190 countries. Virgin Pulse offers solutions that deliver on their home base for health vision of simplifying and unifying other point products into a better together ecosystem and transform the mental, physical, financial, social, community, and emotional health of organizations and their people. You can learn more at virginpulse.com.
Now I'd love to hear from you. The first AIHR online HR course was launched, I think it was March 2017, and you now have a global community, Erik, of what is it, like 2.5 million practitioners? So maybe tell our listeners a bit about them. Who are they, and why do they come to AIHR?
Yeah, of course. So I'll take a step back and explain a bit what AIHR is. We started AIHR in 2016, so a year before we launched our first course, and we started it to write about people analytics and data-driven HR. I had this fantastic passion, and I really wanted to do something in HR. And I ran into my business partner, Nando Steenhuis, who really wants to build a cool company. And together we clicked very well, and we decided, hey, let's start to build this community about practitioners who want to get involved in human resource management, but more from a data perspective. So we started a blog about people analytics, started writing a lot about it. It got picked up internationally quite quickly. We grew the audience very rapidly, and then people started reaching out to us saying, that's very interesting that you write an article, and I love to read a few articles of you, but I want to learn more. Is there a place where I can learn more? And we got that question 1 time, 2 times, 5 times, 10 times. And then at some point, my business partner and I, we looked at each other and we said, maybe we should just go into the training space and make a training for all these readers that now really want to learn more about it. So that's when we started with one training, and that was indeed in March 2017. And now at the moment we're at I think 25, maybe even 30 trainings. I don't know the exact number anymore. But we have this fantastic community of indeed millions of HR practitioners that visit us every year. I think 4 million or so it will be this year. In 2020, and most of them are HR professionals working in large corporate organizations, looking to upskill. What we see in HR is that there's a big gap when it comes to certain future-oriented skills. Think about people analytics. I mentioned already, digital skills, and I can dive into some more details if that's interesting, Bill. But these future-oriented skills, there's a big skill gap, and what we do with our practitioners or the students that come to our platform, we upskill them in these skills, and in terms of customers. Customers include an organization like the United Nations, an organization like Comcast that we upskill, and I think in total we have over 200 of the Fortune 500 working with us, either with a single seat or a company-wide seat where they have thousands or sometimes more than 1,000 HR practitioners who come to us, who get their training, and who learn practical skills that they can apply the next day in their career, and that can help them advance the organization, advance their HR practices, and advance their own career. And these people are from the US mostly. Most of our students are based in the US, but also Canada, the UK, the rest of Europe, the Middle East, Southeast Asia. So it's a truly global audience, which I think is very interesting, because the desire to upskill, the desire to learn and to learn these future-oriented skills is a global phenomenon that we see all over the world.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I would like actually to probe you a bit more when it comes to those skills. Maybe you can spell out for our audience what those skills are that practicing HR pros say that they most need right now to stay relevant, and maybe you could also add a bit more why they need to stay relevant. What are those fears? Being augmented by AI, for example, is one that I hear of a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely one of the potential threats towards the not even so far future, actually. So I think to answer this question, I would challenge the listener to to compare the job vacancy of an HR business partner position today with a similar HR business partner position 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago. And then you'll see some key differences in the job description today that you won't find 5 years ago. And I think they boil down to 3 areas. The first one is data literacy or data-driven people analytics, depending on the terminology. There's a real need for today's HR business partners, for today's HR professionals, to understand data, to be able to work with data, to quantify what's happening in the workplace, and translate that to translate their HR data to the data of the business, and to use that data to make more evidence-based, data-driven decisions. I think that's the first of 3 key areas that we are seeing. Then the second area is, and that's probably the oldest skill of them all, is business acumen. Do you, as an HR professional, have a profound understanding of the business you're working in, of the strategy of the business, and of the external environment, the competition that your business is competing with? Do you know what distinguishes your business from the rest? Having that kind of understanding will make you a very viable sparring partner of the business. That you need that understanding, that business acumen, in order to be a true value-adding partner of the business, to be a true business partner in the end. What's in the name. And then the third element is about digital integration. You mentioned it, AI is coming. There's a lot of technology. I think that the prevalence of AI in HR is not to confuse with the name AIHR, but the functional use of artificial intelligence in HR is still relatively limited. But there are a lot of opportunities if we look in the technology corner, if we look at automation, digital skills, and as today's HR professionals, we need to be aware of the technology that's happening, that's being invented around us, and we need to think, how can we leverage that technology in order to make our HR processes more efficient, to reach our HR goals, to reach our HR strategy, and to, in the end, boost the business, enable the business to create impact. And I think those are the 3 key areas. So it's data literacy, business acumen, and this digital integration.
Okay, we could have a whole separate podcast around how easy it is to teach business acumen, but nature versus nurture. But we won't. Instead, I'd love if you're able to maybe share some examples, name drop some companies if you can. If not, talk in general. To hear some examples from you then in terms of where companies are using this new set of skills and are upskilling their HR teams to make an impact to the business.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and most of our customers come to us for a few specific reasons. Oftentimes, they have an HR business partner population that's that's doing a good job, but the current demands, the demands of today, have changed from the demands 5 years ago. And upskilling that HR business partner population is one of the key projects that we do with a lot of different organizations. One example is a fast moving consumer goods company, and they had this challenge, or they're in the process now. They're having less and less of this challenge. They have this challenge of their HR business partners. They're on point, but they're not leveraging data and digital tools in order to be more effective in their work. So they came to us saying, hey, we have this challenge. We want to be a more data-driven company, and we want to drive business acumen, which, as you rightfully said, is hard to train. It's hard to improve, but it is improvable. That's something I'm convinced of. And they said, hey, can we have is there a way where we can upskill our HR business partners on the one hand in identifying those core business issues where they should add value to the business, and then to find ways where they can leverage data, leverage the insights that we are already creating in our organization in order to create more business value. So that's then a process that we are now going in with this specific company, and we take them through that course. Another company that we're working with is in the engineering field, and they approach us saying, "Hey, we want to upskill. This is our 2025 vision. We want to upskill the full organization. How do we do that?" And then we take these organizations through a process that we have. We identify, where do you want to go, and then what are the steps that you want to take to get there. And then we work with them as a knowledge partner, and we help them upskill that their workforce, so their HR workforce specifically.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to hear from you now around what you would say that the role of HR and HR departments should be in the next year. It's just been such a difficult year, right? And we still don't know when we're going to be out of it, but we all think that sometime next year in 2021 we will be through the other side, and therefore we'll be getting back to normal, whatever that new normal will be at that point. But what do you think is next for HR from a people analytics lens, Erik? What are your predictions regarding of HR pros in 2021 and beyond? Or should we really be talking about 2022 and beyond, and assume that 2021 is going to be about firefighting and trying to get back to normal?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think it's important to realize that I think some of the skills that we need in this 2021 firefighting will probably also spill over to 2022. A very, very good example is, conducting HR in times of Corona. Yes, at the moment, a lot of people are working from home, probably just like you and I, Bill, we just spoke about it before the interview. We're working from home, and this requires multiple things, and that's relevant for 2021, but I think also beyond. If we look at today's organizations, a lot of organizations have already stated, like Twitter, like Microsoft, we're moving towards a fully remote or to a blended approach where employees, if they want to work from home, also after the Corona situation, they can work from home. So some of these 2021 skills, I think, will be relevant even after 2020, after next year only. So that's how do you deal with people when they how do you manage people when they work remotely? On the one hand, their work-life balance. Once you're sitting behind your computer, it's very hard to separate from it and enjoy the rest of your life, which might be happening in the same room. So making this a better separation between work and life, I think, is very important. Will only become more important also after 2021. But also the management practices. How do you manage people, who are not physically in the office, but who are working from home? And I think that's also a key challenge that HR is already trying to tackle, but can learn a lot more when it comes to tackling that. I think another element is reskilling in line with the organizational strategy. And creating more of a learning organization, not only in HR but also organization-wide. Innovation is top of mind for a lot of CEOs, for a lot of organizations. How can HR enable the organization to learn in a better way? I think another element looking forward is about effortless shared services. Wherein a lot of HR organizations, our shared service department requires a lot of manual work. With today's digital technologies, we can start to automate a lot of that work, and some of organizations are already doing a fantastic job in it. But improving that, making an effortless shared service unit where the HR professional who's now mostly involved in administrative efforts can then create more value adding services. I think that's another trend that we'll see more and more of, and organizations will become more and more aware of that. And then I think a fourth trend would be, I would call it acing analytics. A lot of organizations are now have in the past invested in analytics, it's still hard to get the full value of your people analytics. I think that's also a topic that we'll see more of. I think that the last item that I hope we'll see more of is a more and more purpose-driven organization. I think that's a trend we're seeing, and a trend where HR can also play a crucial role in.
Awesome. And to get to most of those, or to achieve most of those goals, involves having the skills, of course. In 60 seconds or less, Erik, I like to challenge my guests sometimes and switch it up. 60 seconds or less. Then, when it comes to upskilling their teams, where should HR departments start?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I'll start a timer on my end. So first of all, an HR organization needs to understand their HR strategic priorities, which are usually linked to the business. But that's oftentimes that's a perfect first step. Then next, once you know your strategic priorities, you know where you want to go in 2025 or in the next couple of years, you need to specify, hey, where are we standing at the moment, and what are the skills that we need in order to get to that future state. And that's essentially the gap analysis that you do in order to identify, hey, what is the gap that we need to work on in order to reach that future vision. And then the process that we usually go through is we select different target audiences in the organization. So your HR business partner may have very different requirements from your center of excellence or center of expertise specialist. So learning and development specialist may have a very different need from a D&I specialist. And you need to map those personas. You need to develop the learning journeys for those different personas, draft an implementation plan, and then we can deliver the training. And then it's not about just infusing, like you implied in the previous question. It's just having the knowledge and then it will be fine. It's about having the knowledge, doing a lot of practical exercises, getting the skills that are a result of that knowledge, and then over time building the experience to practically apply it every day in your organization. So it's really about that continuous process of knowledge acquisition, applying it through very practical courses, and then building the experience, and then making the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. That's an iterative journey that you go through in order to improve your skills.
Okay, and for those people who want to improve their skills in even more ways and maybe improve their networks as well, how can they get in contact with you? How can they connect with you personally to maybe pick your brains about things from time to time? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Twitter? Where else can we find you? But also, how can our listeners find out more about all the cool things happening over at AIHR?
Yeah, of course. So you can always connect with me on LinkedIn, Erik van Vulpen. Just type it in, and I hope by now I'm the top one on the list. So that's fairly easy. To find more information about AIHR, go to AIHR.com, and on the website you'll find the core competencies that I spoke about. We offer learning programs for all those core competencies. So digitally driven, the data literacy, but also business acumen, and besides those core capabilities, also the functional capabilities in HR. So whether it's organizational development, diversity and inclusion, talent acquisition, whatever COE you're active in HR, we either have content on it or we're building content on it, and your upskilling journey can start there, and that's a fantastic first step. So that's AIHR.com, just 4 letters. So that's a very easy start, Bill.
That's a pretty expensive domain, I would imagine, but that's another discussion for another time.
That journey to getting that domain justifies a whole different podcast. That's a story I've never shared, but yeah, that was an interesting journey.
Okay, well, there we go. That's our excuse to get back on and do another one of these pretty soon, just there. But for today, that just leaves me to say, Erik, thank you very much for joining me on this.
My pleasure, Bill. Thank you very much for having me.
And listeners, until next time, as always, stay safe and happy working.
Thank you for listening to the HR Chat podcast, brought to you by the HR Gazette.